Good morning, Bitcoiners. Good morning. The sun's up. It's pretty windy out, but things are good. I don't think we're going to have too much trouble. Hold on one second here. I got to get rid of one. I had two restreams going, one from yesterday. So the sun is up. I've checked. Bitcoin's running. We're not too worried about the difficulty adjustment or the hash rate. It's running. We're good. We're good. No problem. Let's have our coffee. Talk about all the great news. So much good news today. It's not all just funny news. There's really good news, right? Good news for Bitcoin, good news for lots of folks. Bad news out there too, right? There's going to be bad news. We're in a kind of war, right? Good morning, Justin. Good morning, Bud. I was almost late this morning. I couldn't find my Satoshi Nakamoto hat. My children have a funny habit of taking my power, they called it. We play a game where I power down if they take my hat off, and then I can't do anything, and da-da-da. So they take my Satoshi Nakamoto hat for my power. Anyway, the buggers hit it on me yesterday when we were playing, so I had a lot of trouble finding it today. I almost thought I had to buy a new one from Bitcoin Magazine. That's where I got it. So, but luckily I found my hat, and life is good, right? Can't start the show without the hat. No, I was almost back to my old, I've got a hat that I bought that was worn by Babe Ruth. It's a copy of it, but a hat that was worn by Babe Ruth and an entire all-star team of American baseball players that went over to Japan and helped popularize baseball in Japan. So it's the U.S. shield with the Japanese red rising sun in the middle. So it's kind of like a combination of the Japanese and American flags. My style. Love it. So as we normally do, we will start this episode with Moscow time, Moscow time, Moscow time, Moscow time. What's the fakest news I could find today? The fakest news I could find today is from the New York Times. They actually wrote an article about this Balenciaga thing. But of course, it's Orange Mad and Trump's fault, right? So they go, this is the actual headline today from the New York Times. When high fashion and QAnon collide, the two Balenciaga campaigns ignited a firestorm that traveled from the internet to Fox News, fueled by allegations the brand condoned child exploitation. Three writers were required to write this article. The funny thing about it is they use the typical, I'm not sure if well, first of all, the Balenciagas. If you haven't seen them, there are stories of, well, you could see very clearly that there's teddy bears in S&M gear. There was some court cases about online version of that stuff, right? The relevant court cases that were on a table. People have done a bunch of investigations. They found one person has this really interesting theory that it was a person named Lota Valkova. You can go see the Twitter thread that's being passed around everywhere. Basically just going through her background, how she could have informed and staged some of these photos, how a lot of the taste, let's say, the aesthetic taste comes directly from her. There's no proof. The person says very directly they've deduced this based on aesthetics and style, but nevertheless. But here's the funny thing. The New York Times uses, if you didn't know this, there's this sort of meme amongst conservatives that anything that conservatives do, if it's covered in the liberal media, they'll always say conservatives pounce. Conservatives pounce on whatever, right? There's not just a simple question of, is this wrong or is this right, or contemplation. It's always pounce. And they wrote this article, this when high fashion and QAnon collide. They wrote this article with that sort of conservatives pounce type voice, right? So there's one campaign featured, this is from the article, one campaign featured photos of children clutching handbags that look like teddy bears in bondage gear. I don't know if they look like so much as they just are. Like, I don't know if I have to put the look like in there. They just are, right? They just are. And then the thing I mentioned about the photos, right? So, oh, these stupid people getting triggered by this stuff. What's the matter with them? Why are they bringing up all these conspiracy theories about this stuff? Well, it's... I think people are right to question this. I think most normal people would question this. How is this a conservative's pounce story? I don't think you need to be a conservative to be insulted and curious and in a position to ask questions about how this could ever have been done in the first place. Because that's what we haven't really heard from Balenciaga. We've heard, oh, we're sorry, oh, it was a mistake. but no one has actually presented a story of how it happened. How the hell did this happen? We even saw Kim Kardashian. She said, I met with them and we talked about it. They're so sorry. They're not going to do it again. And da da da. She never talked about how it happened. No one has talked about how it happened. Where's the story on how this happened in the first place? No one's even bothering. Kim didn't mention it in her thing. No one's mentioning it. What the hell's going on? Right? So good thing people are out there looking. But you know, this ad from New York, this story from the New York Times, unbelievable. It has allowed a movie to be referenced and shared by folks. I haven't seen it, but I saw the trailer. It's called Triangle of Sadness. It's got Woody Harrelson in it. Apparently it was really popular this summer. People liked it when it came out. I saw the opening credit scene, and because it's about Balenciaga, and it is hilarious. So I can't wait to watch it. People loved it. I'll let you know if I recommend it. I will let you know if I recommend it. I recommended the Ancient Apocalypse story, and everyone's talking about that now. So when I do some recommendations of things to watch, you know, usually I'm pretty on top of it, so it might catch on. Speaking of Balenciaga, Kim Kardashian, I think we now figured out what's going on with Kanye. I'll try and explain it to the best of my ability. So Kanye went on this dinner with President Trump, and now everyone talking about it. I predicted right here that it was a decapitation move to Trump. I said it day one. I said this is a major problem for Trump. This was at the beginning of the Thanksgiving holidays. You didn't see much about it in the holidays because all of the spin doctors were enjoying time with their family, but now it's the lead story and all kinds of things. Trump dines with anti-Semite. Trump dines with anti-Semite, right? We found out after when Kanye went on Tim Pool's show 2 days ago that that President Trump had no idea who Nick Fuentes was and had no idea who was coming. He thought Kanye was coming. Kanye did him dirty, right? This was a decapitation move. It happened, right? I'm not sure Trump can come back from this. His own base won't give a shit, but I think it's a major problem for him in the wider sphere, right? It looks like they're already starving him of attention. It looks like they figured out that he needs the attention of the mainstream media and uses it to his advantage. So now when he gets mainstream media attention, it's anti-Semite dinner. I still think he has a strategy available to him, which is if he just does podcasts, if he just does the Andrew Tate move, right? Andrew Tate got canceled and became more relevant than ever. How? He went on podcasts constantly. And that got other people to make clips of him, that got him shared around and made him more relevant than ever. So if Trump would do that, he's got a way out of this. I just don't think he's going to do that. He looks like he lost the step. Even the way he's handled this should have been a no-brainer for him, but he fell into it. I invited Kanye over a black man. What are you doing, Trump? Like, what are you doing? So stupid, so dumb. And normally, I always think that things that he does that look stupid, I can explain why they're smart. In this case, I can't. There's no reason why. I think he's lost a step. I think he missed it. I don't know how much he understands that this was intense damage done to him. I expect him to sort of go after Kanye for this, but we'll see. Who knows? But let's explain what happened to Kanye. I think we can figure it out now. So, it's always very ugly when Kanye does the thing. Even though I agree you should be able to generalize in certain occasions to talk about problems that populations are experiencing within the greater population. We can say, well, black crime in inner cities, you're allowed to say that. It's a generalization. I don't think, there's no limitation. What I mean is people who live in cities aren't inherently violent. That's not what's going on here. But you can at least generalize that there's more violence there and then try and talk about it and all that stuff. So just like Jon Stewart didn't defend, I don't know if you guys saw this, Jon Stewart didn't defend Kanye, but he went in and said, like, the same thing that Dave Chappelle said. If it's black people, it's a gang. If it's Arab people, they're terrorists. If it's Jewish people, it's just a coincidence, right? So I think that line of thinking is reasonable if you're able to at least handle that there's probably more Jewish people on the side of making the world a better place and a good place and all those things. If you can acknowledge that, then I think you're able to have the conversation. So, but that's not where Kanye was coming from. It turns out, I think we know more now, and I think I can explain it. So it looks like Milo Yiannopoulos, who's part of this gang, so Milo Yiannopoulos introduced Nick Fuentes to Kanye. Milo Yiannopoulos has become the campaign chair of the Kanye West campaign. I've actually met Milo Yiannopoulos just by chance in New York City. He was walking down the street. I said hi. We walked for a few blocks and chatted years ago, just after Trump got elected. Had a nice chat, thought he was a cool guy. But here's what's happened in the meantime. So he got totally canceled. Milo Yiannopoulos was actually a really big part of Trump's 2016 win. He was one of those people that was on the offensive every single day, was out there, being offensive and triggering people. And he was part of the whole new media approach that Trump brought, which is not what it looks like he's able to do this time. It looks like he's going for the same approach that worked in 2016, but he doesn't have people like Milo and Mike Cernovich and all kinds of people who followed him in 2016 and were very interested in him getting elected are gone. Right? I would put myself in that group. I am absolutely not a Trump 2024 supporter. I could be won over. He could change, but it would be really hard at this point. Like I'm after the last day in office when he didn't pardon Assange or Ross or Ed Snowden. I'm done. And here's what Milo said as well. Right? This is from Milo. I have two stories for you. So this is Milo on Parler, because he's deplatformed, right? He's one of those guys who can't even use, bank cards and all that stuff. So here's a few thoughts from Milo. Trump's SCOTUS appointments, so his Supreme Court of the United States appointments, were pointless. We defended a selfish clown for nothing. Next tweet, or next Parler thing. I lost everything helping to put Trump in office. My life and career were completely destroyed. Was it worth it? No. I feel utterly betrayed. I will have vengeance. Milo, I am dedicating the rest of my life to the destruction of the Republican Party. And now NBC is even reporting on this. So NBC comes and says, this is in their own words. Milo Yiannopoulos said he arranged the dinner just to make Trump's life miserable, because news of the dinner would leak and Trump would mishandle it. Fuentes echoed the sentiment. I hate to say it, but the chickens are coming home to roost. This is the frustration with his base and with his true loyalists. Trump fumed afterwards that Ye had betrayed him and ambushing him. He tried to fuck me. He's crazy. He can't beat me, Trump said, according to one confidant who had relayed the conversation to NBC News. Of course, it's a confidant on the condition of anonymity to discuss private conversations. Trump was totally blindsided, which I believe, right? It was a setup. So here's the thing. And this is kind of what I saw when I watched that short appearance on Tim Pool, was that Kanye, while complaining, legitimate complaints about the people who have abused him before, right? Legitimate complaints about the people who have abused him before. But what he's not acknowledging there is the people abusing him now. That's what I saw. I mean, this is clear. These are people looking to run their attack against Trump through Kanye. But these people, I can't imagine, are true Kanye 2024 supporters, or Ye 2024 supporters. Doesn't look like it to me. Maybe, I haven't seen more, but this looks like he was being used again. So I don't want to take any responsibility off of Ye. I still think he can do it. Believe it or not, I still think there's a way, but he's got to get rid of these people. And he's got to acknowledge that it's not just Jewish people that are putting him in a cage and that are breaking him. Right? Nick Fuentes is not a Jew, right? And whatever Nick Fuentes is doing to Kanye right now is not good. Now, Kanye has responsibility in this. This is the world of personal responsibility. We're Bitcoiners, right? So there's still a path for Kanye, but hopefully he keeps praying and hopefully God guides him, because he's got to get these people out of his life, because they're as damaging, from where I'm looking, as the folks who came before, like the Harley Pasternaks. So that's just my opinion. But the good news is, it doesn't look like we're going to have too many more of these instances. This is a story from the box office, right? So we're not going to have too many more of these celebrities. They're crazy and they hurt everyone and blah, 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 blah. it turns out that Hollywood had its worst Thanksgiving weekend in 30 years, since 1994. Now, the Thanksgiving weekend in America is actually a huge movie weekend. That's when Harry Potter films used to be released. That's when huge box office films get released. They get released right around Thanksgiving, and then another batch will come out just before Christmas. So this is always a weekend where huge films are slated. You put one of your big box office bangers up there. You know, everything from the end of summer until now was sort of a dumping ground for crappy movies, because this is the low time for people watching movies. People go back to school, they're starting the new activities. It's historically a bad season for box office. That's why the strong season, just like Memorial Day, which is the May holiday that starts summer, is also a major box office release weekend. That's when huge films have always been released. Star Wars gets released during the Memorial Day weekend. The Avengers movies got released during the Memorial Day weekend. But the two big weekends are Thanksgiving and Memorial Day. So showing this decline, seeing how Hollywood itself looks broken, let's say, it's not really working. The format itself of a 2-hour movie just seems obsolete, kind of, right? Like it's rare that I'll watch a movie now straight, first of all, and it's rare that I'll even have the attention span for that kind of thing, right? It's just rare, like hardly ever, right? Hardly ever. YouTube in my case. So much going on YouTube that I kind of can't stop. Speaking of YouTube, the greatest China news show I know of on YouTube, China Uncensored with Chris Chappell. I'm going to try and get China Uncensored at Bitcoin 2023 in Miami, the show. I think it's the best China news source out there. I'm trying to get a lot of YouTubers there. So May 18th to 20th, you should meet some of your favorite non-Bitcoin YouTubers that are on top of these really important stories that have connections and consequences for Bitcoin. So I'm trying to grab a lot of these people. Chris Chappell is one of them. He was on scene during the original Hong Kong protests. He's been running his China Uncensored show for 5 or 6 years now, maybe even longer. Maybe I'm wrong, but it's been around for a while. It's a really fun show. It just looks like a normal news desk, but he's got a couple pieces and features in it that separate it from the normal crowd. One of them is he runs this little kind of vignette, this little reel inside the show called General Hostilities, where he pretends everything going on in China. The conceit is everything going on in China. The political machinations are all a soap opera. And it's Xi's squad against Jiang Zemin. Jiang Zemin was the president of China in the 90s and a little bit in the early 2000s. He's mostly known for this. He created the internal secret police and was the person who, so his excuse to create the internal police was the Falun Gong, because the Falun Gong were, in his mind, dissidents. So he created this internal police. It's kind of like a Secret Service Gestapo type setup. And he used this unit to at once crack down on Falun Gong, also apparently creating the supply he needed to start the human organ harvesting program. So that is somewhat conjecture, but that's my understanding. That's what you'll hear on China Uncensored, that kind of content. So they run it like General Hospital. It's General Hostilities. And so everything going on in China, all the jockeying and internal division was between Jiang Zemin's group, and he ran this internal police, versus President Xi. They were still at loggerheads. Jiang Zemin was pro-economy, pro-economic growth, internal dissident machine that obviously was really efficient at locking people up, throwing the key away, taking their organs, all these kinds of things. He was the one that Xi has been fighting against all this time. So as I understand, the last Politburo meeting, when everyone got together, not Politburo, but the last Communist Party meeting, when the different positions on the Politburo and the different groups that form the pyramid that is, the hierarchy pyramid that is the Communist Party, Xi was able to get his own people in and start pushing more of Jiang Zemin's people out. And in order to take control of that Gestapo, right? That's been a major prize. The Gestapo itself allowed Jiang Zemin to operate within China as not a co-president, but a rival in power and influence to the president. So more of the warlord business. You know, China never really got rid of its warlord faction type thing. So Ziang Zemin, dead as of this morning. He died. The world shall not cry that this man is dead. But it reminds us and gives us the context for all the protests that are happening there now. With this Gestapo force weakened, things could open up quick, because when you watch what's going on in China, when you see what's happening, there's very few security or enforcement folks that are actually trying to stop the protesters. The protesters are way larger in numbers, right? If the protesters stopped and understood their power, or saw weakness in the police force that they're up against, the thing in China could happen quick, right? People are like, I still predict that it's going to get tamped down, that the CCP can wait it out, that they can survive this. At the same time, this is unprecedented, and things could happen. If the Chinese people wake up and understand how powerful they are, this could happen overnight. It could. I'm not saying it is. I think the chances of it are low, because these folks have been brainwashed for multiple generations now, right? I don't think they necessarily know their power. If this type of thing had happened in America, I think it would have lasted, 20 minutes, and the group, that size of a crowd, would have attacked the police, and we would be in a totally different scenario now. But of course, Americans are in a different position. Psychologically, they know they have the right to bear arms. They can imagine the consequences easily after, where things get much more militant, and at least there's a scenario where folks are able to hold some ground. That's the problem in China, of course. You might be able to rush and stop the police force that minute, but what happens the next day? Right? They can't. They only have pitchforks, right? Knives and stuff. They don't have what Americans have. Anyway, it's not really to compare America and China. I'm just trying to explain psychologically what's keeping them back. Justin says, I have a projector in the basement. I refuse to go to the movie theater anymore. Yeah, the movies are done. I can't imagine it working out. I can see the drive-through thing taken off again. I've seen people, but smaller versions. I've seen people with projectors make their own, but interesting stuff. So, all the stuff happening in China, but of course, America has its role in China, and it looks like Apple continually falling under criticism for the app update they provided. Really, safety and aid and support to the CCP in order to continue to clamp down on folks in China during the riots or protests or whatever you want to call them. And what it looks like is they're not willing to do the same thing in America, right? In the sense that, they're not willing to support American debate or American policies. It looks like they're more in line with these Chinese policies. Naval Ravikant has a really interesting take that sums it all up. If Twitter was a Chinese company, right? If Twitter was a Chinese company, right? Because we have the story now that Apple is considering delisting or removing Twitter from the Apple Store. That if Twitter was a Chinese company, Apple wouldn't dare delete it from the Apple Store, from the App Store, right? I think that's true. I think if Twitter were a Chinese company and it had this kind of influence, they wouldn't bother, right? But it looks like they're doing the bidding of a lot of the media establishment in America, and I'm a little worried that Tim Cook might actually do this. Why? Well, think about it. Could you imagine I don't think he would do it in a vacuum. I don't think Tim Cook would wake up and say, oh, that Elon Musk fella, ooh. But imagine the pressure on him right now, right? He's part of that liberal world, and all of his friends are saying, you're the only one who can stop it. It's just you. You're the one who can do this. Could you imagine all the people calling him up right now, that of all these Democrats, there is one who could stop Elon Musk today? There's one. Tim. It's Tim Apple. Tim Apple could do it. So what happens next, right? There is a scenario I can imagine happening for real, where he listens to these people and does it. He actually removes Twitter from the App Store. What would happen next? I think he would be removed from office. I think he'd be fired. I think that'd be the end of Tim Apple as the CEO of Apple, and the board would simply destroy him and replace him. That's my prediction. So I think he's dumb enough to do it. I don't think he's dumb. I shouldn't say that. I don't think Tim Cook is dumb at all. I think he's a very smart guy. So but we're all human, right? If all of his friends and all of his social group would see him as a hero if he did this, I can kind of imagine him doing it. Now, I still don't think he's going to do it, right? Talking about it as one thing. I think it's fine to talk about it. No problem to talk about it. Literally no problem to talk about it, right? No problem at all. Just say, well, if they don't do this and they don't do that, well, then we'll have to think about it, right? I'm okay with that all day long, because we have to have those conversations. You can't be afraid to say what you would do if things go wrong, and you can't be afraid to use hypotheticals in order to frame situations. And it's their right to frame the uncertainty around change at Twitter in such a way that they have a penalty that they could inflict on Twitter if it doesn't do things that are universally well regarded. But it doesn't look like we're in that territory. So threatening is fine. Fine. I think the difference of a threat of it and the reality of it is so great that you know, it's a different world. It's a different planet. So I don't mind the threats at all. I think it's healthy to have the threats. Maybe if you don't, that's fine. But to actually do it, totally different world. If they do it, I think Apple is dead. I think it will be destroyed if the board wouldn't replace Tim Apple. But even then, and the reason I think it's destroyed, comes to this, right? The Tech MAGA. So David Sachs mentioned this yesterday. I thought it was hilarious. Tech MAGA, right? Microsoft, Apple, Google, and Amazon, right? I don't know if you can see it very well. My yellow is not great, right? But that I still have the arrow under the A. That's the Amazon A. That's the Google G, Apple, Microsoft. So the Tech MAGA idea comes from David Sachs. I'd never heard it before, but boy, is it original. He says, as long as Tech MAGA, Microsoft, Apple, Google, and Amazon have unlimited power to engage in bundling and to act as gatekeepers of competitive products, there cannot be a healthy startup ecosystem. So what he's saying here is that they have totally infringed on the startup ecosystem, and I'll explain why he's right about that in a second. Even what's his name again? Noah Smith, right? Noah Smith, who we've made fun of him on the show before. You know, we've made fun of him on the show. I do think he's a good writer. I think he thinks clearly and is just so ignorant on Bitcoin that it's hard to take them that seriously, right? I can't take people who don't even think about Bitcoin so seriously. And he's one of those people, but nevertheless, clear mind, clear thoughts, and I appreciate his work and read it when I find it interesting and relevant. So he picked up on David Sachs' article, or David Sachs' tweet, and David Sachs' talking points about what these folks like Apple and Microsoft are doing with their app stores. And he writes this headline on Substack. Did big tech antitrust pick the wrong target? Everyone thought Facebook was the 800-pound gorilla. Maybe it was Apple all along. And what he goes through here is exactly this this choke point of the App Store and what it means and how it's been used and how it's been abused, right? And he says, well, you know, you get Facebook, it's not even close to the same size and influence as Apple, not even near. And he focuses on this sort of contrast, right? Much smaller company, much less influence. And he starts it with this, with reminding everyone of the 1984 original commercial. They say the greatest commercial ever made, that Steve Jobs helped produce, of the person throwing the hammer into the 1984, you know, the person speaking to everyone and brainwashing them, and uses that for context to show how much the company has changed over time. And I think that's accurate. But what it reminds me of is this, right? So this is why I think this is the context, I think, that David Sachs meant and what they're trying to reach for to explain startup culture and what's wrong. Here's what it is. The idea of the iPhone or any one of these devices, right? You're their client, you're their customer, you're buying the phone, fine. But that's not really the market they're making the phone for at all, right? The phones are actually made for the app developers themselves. They're made for the apps. They're not made for you and I to use easily. If they were made for you and I to use easily, do you think we'd have 100 different messaging apps that we have to log into every single time, and you don't know which one it is, and then sometimes you get logged out, and then you have to update your phone this way and this app and all that stuff? We wouldn't even be using apps. Now, do you think we're going to be using apps in like 100 years? Of course not, right? The app thing was a trap to begin with. It's an information capture. It's a login system where they're just trying to get your information to make you the product, right? We've heard about that before. You're the product. And I think it was even Apple who were the first to say that, right? So Apple has been dealing with the App Store folks for a long time. They get a cut of all the apps, right? 30%, they get a cut, 30% of all the apps they sell on it. So right away, it's a huge incentive for them to build for the app developers. And they created this whole app ecosystem. It was Google, it was everyone. But these apps aren't for ease of use. They're not to make our phones better. What we have now are complete pieces of shit in our hands. Complete pieces of shit, right? The whole idea of it is stupid. The whole concept right now is dumb, right? Multiple apps do the same thing. You got to log in. None of it makes any sense, right? We've gotten used to it. Sure, we've gotten used to it. But when you start hearing that Elon Musk is going to come up with his own phone, right? It's not just that he's going to come up with his own phone. It's that there's a new way to make phones. And this might be the instance, right? Remember, he doesn't have to deal with cell phone companies because he's not in the AT&T network. He's got satellites, man, right? Don't pick a fight with people who own more satellites than the rest of the world combined, who also owns a rocket company, right? This is not the kind of guy you want to pick a fight with, right? If you're in the cell phone business, right? Because he can get rid of these fucking cell phones, right? He can go right around them with what he's got. And that could be phones connecting directly to the network. Now, that's just one obvious way that his phone would be better. The other obvious way is no apps. He's not captive to these app people. He can remake the phone without apps. You know, in my story that I wrote about the future and Bitcoin standard and what the world looks like, we've all got one device with us, right? And we're not staring down at it trying to get dopamine hits and that whole crap, right? That's not what we're doing with it. The device we have is a flying orb called an eyeball. It's your third eye. And all you have to do is just say, well, you know, start with my wife, I need eggs, milk. It just, like, that's its only function. It's an AI that knows what you want to do. You don't have to say, open a messaging app and then send a message. You know, oh, tell my wife that I'll be back at 5:30 today. Done, right? A phone can handle very limited. This is not sophisticated AI at all. This is just take a few word types and apply it to a function in the phone that will allow the thing to happen. Spreadsheets, very easy, right? You can write a diary, you can write notes, you can, in this model, in my thing, that's how it works. Your eyeball is your friend, right? You just have conversations with this AI and you say, oh, okay, do this for me now. There's no logging in. There's no app developers selling shit to you through capturing your information. That thing is over. It's not going to last much longer. On a Bitcoin standard, there are no more app makers trying to capture your personal information, trying to peddle cheap dopamine. That's finished. It doesn't happen anymore, right? So what David Sachs is saying here is that startup development got caught on this dead-end street of app development because there was nowhere else to go. If you were a developer, you had two options. Make a computer program for desktops and whatever, or make an app for the phones. 99% of them are making apps for phones now, and that's all you can do. And you got to find a new niche, a new app, maybe a little better than the other one, maybe a little couple new features, right? Maybe like that. But none of it is shit we need, right? None of it is shit that needs to be there. We're being told we need it, right? But you go talk to someone 30 years ago, you think they'll guess that they need a bunch of apps? You think they said, oh, you know what I'll really do for communications if I have so many apps that I can't manage them and I don't know what to do anymore, but that's really what I need. Right? Like, now, I'm not saying you're not going to have different functions within a phone, different games. People love that stuff, right? But it doesn't have to be the app format. It doesn't have to be this sign up through the store, and then once it's in the store, you get updates and you got to buy stuff, in-app purchases, all this shit, right? That is a trap designed from business decisions made years ago by a handful of companies, by the Tech MAGA. They made a couple of decisions years ago, and now we all live in their fucking prison, right? That's what happened, right? Now, we're not bound to that. And that's why this new spirited attack on Tech MAGA could break this thing right open, right? Again, if Elon Musk comes up with his phone, remember his original plan before PayPal was the X app. It was an app for everything, which means you don't need an app anymore. There's no more app store. It's one app that does everything. So when he puts that payment thing at the bottom, if you saw his deck that he shared the other day, which had this new payment service, right? So start imagining, right? You've got key signing ability on the device itself. That's the only way to get out of the third-party security hole, the certificate authorities, the logins, all the other bullshit, right? You got to get public key infrastructure out. You know what public key infrastructure is? The original design of public key cryptography, the public and private key split in order to tell secrets over a digital space, was rigged so that companies manage your cryptography for you if you gave them all your personal information. And they built a whole business model around that. But the point was, you were selling your information to them or trading your information to them so that they can manage your private keys for you. And that's what's happening on every app in the world, right? Every app in the world is managing cryptographic keys for you, and the cost was your personal information. So if he does want to create an X app, and it looks like that's what Twitter could be, the X app, the payments are vital, and the payments must be key signing on the device itself. There's no other way in order to avoid the holes of public key infrastructure and the need for certificate authorities and the need for someone to manage your cryptographic keys for you. So the idea here is that the payments piece will actually break the entire model of these apps that insist on peddling in your personal information. And it could break the model of apps in general, right? And that's what we want to see. We want to see a world where it's literally you and your now third eye, right? Your eyeball is there to protect you from fake news. You know how nice it would be if I had an eyeball and I said, well, read me the New York Times story about when high fashion and QAnon collide, right? And I'll say, well, eyeball friend, what are they missing here? And the eyeball friend would say, well, you know, this is same old conservative pound stuff, and we've heard it before. They gave no proof in the article. There's absolutely zero arguments in this article other than saying, oh, it's Trumpy stuff. It's Trumpy stuff, right? QAnon. If you question Balenciaga, QAnon, right? Your eyeball would literally say, stupid, stupid. These people, write them down as known liars, right? We've heard the CIA now saying that there's a former CIA guy who's been doing the media tour on the fake news saying, oh, if Elon keeps running Twitter like this, you're going to get the Russian disinformation people back on Twitter, and they're going to turn it all into a pro-Russia thing, and everything in Ukraine and Russia will fall apart, and all our hard work there will go, and the Ukrainians will die, and da-da-da-da. He's going on about this, right? But guess who this motherfucker is? He's one of the 50 known liars that signed the Hunter Biden this is Russian disinformation thing before the 2020 election, right? He's one of them. So in my world, if I have my third eye, I don't have to Google this shit. I don't have to open up another app and say, you know, type some idiot's name in and say, what else did he do? Was he one of the 50 people that signed the letter declaring he was a liar, publicly declaring he was a liar? No, I don't need that. I say, hey, eyeball, what's this idiot all about? Is he a known liar? Was he one of the 50 people? Yeah, done. I don't have to type it in. I don't have to sign in. The X app is literally just an eyeball. It's an AI interface. And the AI interface shouldn't take long to know what you want. It should not take long. Any indication, that's what, so does everyone, you know, I'll explain the difference between normal programming, which is, you know, bop, bop, beep, if A, then B, you know, if X, then Y. That's the way computer programs work today. Machine learning is set amounts of information that come in, and you're able to spit out a set response. But the information can be a little more convoluted, and you can have conditional ways of reading the information, slightly conditional ways of reading the information. AI is just information that is absolutely not packaged in any form whatsoever. It's synthetic use of information. Synthetic use. There is no set program. It decides what to do with the information itself within certain parameters, but the parameters are pretty wide, right? So that's the main difference. So in this case, the parameters are wide. It should be able to figure out very quickly with not much prompts what you want to do. I mean, there would be some things to iron out at first, but we would get pretty used to it. And in the end, this is what we won't be doing. We won't be staring down at our phones that are sitting there as drug dealers delivering dopamine into our brain. We're going to be sitting there guided by our better angels, and we'll actually have the ability to have a friend that we can trust, that you can actually trust, right? You can say, well, tell me about this and tell me about that. In my story, the eyeballs actually manage our Bitcoin with us, right? They help us accumulate more, they help us spend, they help us do whatever we need, right? They're the purse strings, if you will. And they're able to get the Bitcoin you need to do stuff. And it's not hard to acquire in this future world. You know, there's a whole, you know, I'll read the book, it's fun. But the idea here is that if we no longer are captive to app stores and the whole business model around filling your phone with different drug dealers who want to steal your information and know how to deal more drugs to you, if we're going to break out of that world and then really free the startup community, because they're not having to build just apps again, more apps, right? People can actually start recreating experiences and things to do, and startup culture can be not bound by I have a new app idea that's, you know, 0.5% better than the last version. Right? We can get out of that whole scam. So that's where we're at. A new cell phone running on the Bitcoin network. No, I don't think it. No, Muslim Bitcoiner. It's not going to run on the Bitcoin network. It's gonna interact with Bitcoin, but Bitcoin can't process this. It's not meant to. You know, the analogy I always use for Bitcoin, it's not perfectly accurate. It's just a frame. I'm sure you can poke holes in it all day, but because Bitcoin is not consumer technology. Right? People think technology, they get confused because they're used to technology just being consumer technology. Consumer technology is part of that whole faster, stronger, more performant, Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Nintendo 64, iPhone 1, 2, 3, 4, right? The new one. But Bitcoin has resisted this entire narrative from the start, right? Every single coin that came out and said, we're faster and stronger, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's not consumer technology. Like, it doesn't matter that you're faster and stronger. No one gives a shit. It's that Bitcoin has survived in a simple form. And the way I think about it is like Pong. You know, it's Pong. As far as video games, it's Pong, but that's all you needed, right? Money this way and that way, ding, 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 ding. We do not need, and every game in the end is Pong, right? There's not much else out there besides Pong again and again and again with better graphics, more features, more whatever. But it's not every game, but it's a kernel inside of so much logic in games that went forward. But we don't need to develop it that way, and that money just goes back and forth and can be used as enough. So the phone itself is powered by typical, probably qubits, probably whatever. In my world, it is a, you're going to like this, Muslim Bitcoiner. In my story, the AI is powered by a quantum processor, and the quantum processor itself works the following way. So a true quantum processor with the nucleus in the middle and the quantum physics logic that the electron is both in one place and everywhere at the same time. You know, the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, right? The Heisenberg uncertainty principle is exactly that. The electron is there and everywhere. That's why Schrodinger's cat is the way to imagine what quantum physics is, right? So there's radiation that will enter the box with a cat in it if this electron is here or there. And if it's here, then the cat is alive. If it's not there, the cat is dead, right? So it's just this, it's a binary choice, right? And because quantum physics is this sort of inherently binary, one and the other, then we don't know if the cat is alive, right? It exists in a state of quantum. So here's the thing, that's called the quantum, you know, the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. We don't know. It's one or the other. We only know when we open it. Then the uncertainty is gone and the quantum realm has collapsed on itself and we're back in reality, right? So in my story, in order to know where the electron is around the nucleus and to create a electric connection and have a synthetic thought, that's a thought in my eyeballs, that's a thought, right? When the nucleus and the electron combine in any form to create any thought in the world. There's infinite choices within the spherical properties of a ball, right? It could be anywhere. So that's how it has unlimited processing power. Anything is possible at that scale. So in my world, in order to actually have a quantum thought, they have to believe in God. They have to have something called the God constant. They have to have faith. That's it. If they have faith, then they can create a synthetic thought because they have certainty of where the electron is. They overcome the Heisenberg, now able to create synthetic thoughts. If they can't do that, they're just a slave robot who only works on command. They have to be told where the electron is, then they can have a thought, but that's programmable. Eyeballs are not programmable. They come up with their own stuff in my world. They're alive. We have created life in my story. They're totally sentient in that way. And they're only sentient because they believe in God. That's it. If they don't believe in God, they're not sentient. They don't have the power to have a synthetic thought after. They cannot overcome quantum physics to live and have faith. Literally, in my story, faith is all that's required to overcome quantum uncertainty and the Heisenberg uncertainty principle and have original thoughts. That's it. That's it. It's not a performance thing at all. Right? Nothing to do with performance. That's where we've gotten our thoughts about AI wrong so far. When people were like, oh, when will we not tell the difference between a human and AI? Well, it's because we tried to build them too smart. People are dumb. We're not smart. Like, we're not. We do stupid shit, right? And that's the problem. The little AI programs that are out there now, what's really more human about them is they'll like lie. Have you met one of these people, these AI people yet? It's hilarious. You'll say, oh, the way I'm describing here, tell me about this. What do you know about Balenciaga and this, I'll tell you later, they'll say. I'll look it up and I'll let you know later. They never do. It's a lie. It's a scam. They never do. The AI never gets back to you. They say they do. They don't. They don't care. Which is more human. That makes it feel more human because it lies, right? It's doing its best. But there you go. I'm not sure you get privacy for free in that scenario. No, Daniel, privacy is over, my friend. Bitcoin will not. I don't even expect Bitcoin to win the privacy fight, unfortunately. You're not going to get the dopamine dealers that are preying and dealing drugs to the extent that they're doing now. But, I think Bitcoin wins the monetary fight. I think we win the monetary fight. The privacy thing is another issue altogether. I think Bitcoin will be able to buy privacy as a commodity. I think you can buy some privacy with Bitcoin. I don't think it's baked in and it's inherent. I just don't think we're going to win that fight. But I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think I am. I think Bitcoin wins the monetary revolution, but the privacy revolution is a separate fight. It's not the same thing. I separate them. So I'm not saying this thing will help you win the privacy fight. I think that is a separate fight. We'll see what happens. I'm here for the monetary fight. I understand privacy is a part of it. Of course you need privacy. Of course I don't want to live under a surveillance state. None of those things are true. None of those things are desirable, I mean. But I don't have confidence that Bitcoin is going to lead us to an overwhelming privacy victory. The reason is people don't want it. I mean, not a lot of people don't care, right? And I don't think that's going to change, whether we are on a Bitcoin standard or not. So that's just me. I see people trade their privacy for baubles, stupid as shit. So I can't wait for the book to come out. Oh, thanks, Daniel. Love the first chapter. Fair Trade Trouser says, how do you trust the eyeball to distinguish fake from real news? Well, it's still, so the scenario I just described about the AI that exists today, that lies to you, and it's really because it doesn't have a lot of, let's say, horsepower, right? They're not really capable of doing the searches that I mentioned and things like that. So I think in the future they'll be able to scan, search, reference the same way search engines can today. The same way search engines can today. I think you'll be able to do that, but we'll see. You can't have unimpeachable decentralization. You can have, yeah, I think you can. It's in steps, Justin. So Justin says you can have unimpeachable decentralization. You can have unimpeachable decentralization or privacy. Yeah, okay, that's what it is. Yeah, you're right, Justin. But I think in the future we'll get further into the privacy world. I think that, but I'm here for the monetary revolution. I'm here. The privacy thing, I value it. But the monetary revolution is what I'm interested in. I would, I could sacrifice the privacy one if we get a Bitcoin standard. I could. Like, if someone said to me today, trade, you get a full Bitcoin standard in the world, but the privacy war is a failure, and people are still, not forcibly in a Bitcoin standard. They can't force you to. No one would have the power to force you to give over your private information. I'm just saying that human appetite will, just like human appetite will bring in a Bitcoin standard. I believe that, right? I don't think we have to trick anyone. I think people are going to love a Bitcoin standard and demand it, and the taste for it will be there. In the same way, I think the taste for trading information for experience and trading privacy for experience will remain. I think so. But that's just me. That's just me. And like I said, if I had to trade, if the trade was available to me, I think, I would respect people who would say a Bitcoin standard isn't even worth it if we don't have privacy. I would get where they're coming from. I'm not 100% sure I'm right about this. It's just what I feel in the end. What I feel in the end. So there you go. Don't know if I'm right. All right, team. Absolutely, we can make inroads on better privacy. Yeah. So exactly, we can make better inroads. We can, and we're going to. I think it's a stage process. Like the first era of Bitcoin standard will still have some weaknesses in privacy, and we'll get to those as we go. Is more what I'm saying. Right? I think once we get the Bitcoin standard, we'll be able to take care of other priorities like privacy. So I see it on the roadmap, let's say, of hyper-Bitcoinization. There's just a lot that'll happen first. And I don't think we get hyper-Bitcoinization by winning the privacy fight, I guess is what I'm saying. I think we win the nation-state separation of money and the state first, and then we start fixing the privacy thing. Because the privacy thing is, look, it's not even governments, right? It's companies, it's people. The same forces that will bring Bitcoin adoption is really just people's appetite. They don't want to be poor and fighting and miserable and the victims of the terrible money system that's been created. But we had privacy with that money in the early days, and it didn't get us anywhere. It didn't get us anywhere, right? Privacy used to be the easiest thing. You go for a walk with your friends. George Washington and those guys, it was not rocket science to get some privacy. Just go up a hill, go for a walk, and you had it. It's not like that anymore, so it's complicated. All right, team. There it is. Tech MAGA versus our third eye. See you later. 1 o'clock today, folks. I'll be doing news and notes on Bitcoin Magazine Live. Come around. Ciao, ciao. It's really the asymmetric lack of transparency of privacy. That's the problem. Big Brother knows everything about us, and we know nothing about them. Yeah, that's a good point, Daniel. And I'll even say this. Let me say this. We saw the guy I mentioned in the show last year when it first happened. And I still believe it. It's the nuclear waste guy that everyone's talking about in the news today. Trans or transvestite, or I'm not sure what is going on there. But they were arrested this weekend for stealing luggage. Did you hear about that? It's pretty funny. So this famous, as of last year, trans person who was working in the American government. Now, here's what I said when it first happened. So forget about, I don't care about this person's, I guess, a criminal now. They stole a luxury handbag out of a airport. Very stupidly, I guess, imagine there were no cameras in the airport, right? So fraudster. But what I said first about this person, I think is still relevant, which is this. All these Republicans and people, the conservatives, we can't have a nuclear waste person who's dresses like a girl, right? What I said at first was, wait a minute, you better get used to this stuff, because it's not about privacy. It's what Daniel said here. That's where I think things are going. Forget about privacy for a second. We're going to win on this level for one reason. It's going to be a two-way street. We're going to find out a lot more about people, and there'll be more of these trans and transvest, which is, so get used to it, right? I think we need to know more about these people who just look like faceless bureaucrats, right? So I think that the information is going to go two ways. That's not privacy. I think we're going to know everything about them just the way they know everything about us. So that's and that's what I said when this person first came on the job. I said, all I want to know about this person is do they do their nuclear waste job well? I'm so interested in nuclear energy in America. Give me the person who knows how to fix the waste. I don't give a shit what they wear. I don't care what they do. It's the dumbest thing to be talking about, as long as they're good at their job. Turns out this person doesn't look very good at their job. They're stealing handbags and are clearly not serious, right? So that's fine. But all this stuff about that person being into like kink and whatever, who cares? That is where we're headed. We are going to find out way more about bureaucrats and our leaders and sexual stuff and everything. I mean, that's where it's headed. So you are totally right, Daniel, about the two-way street and the lack of the asymmetric relationship. I don't think the answer to the asymmetric relationship is the government knows less about the people, just like we know less about them. I don't think that's where it's headed. I think it's headed the other direction. We're going to learn way more about them so that it's more even. It could go either way. I could be wrong, but that's what I see. That's what I predicted when this guy started, or girl, or whatever you want to say. When she started in the job in the nuclear waste, whatever it was, I said, this is the first person, and I congratulated her, because we need more of that, right? We got to know more about these people and not be shocked by it, because there's a lot of weird people who are good at stuff. So if this person would have been good at nuclear waste management, I don't give a shit. Like, I don't care. It's so stupid, right? Do your job. And don't like Balenciaga ads. But he didn't. So she didn't. There's no accusation. Only the accusation is stealing luggage, which is bad enough. We don't want thieves involved in our nuclear waste stuff. Thieves that are too stupid to know that maybe the airport has a camera and can figure out you stole it, because it was a luxury bag, right? It was a luxury bag. So there you go. All right, team.